Hey everyone, thanks for joining me on this episode of If I Had a Podcast. A few days ago, someone asked me a question. It was a joke, but some questions are loaded, and in the light of economic boredom, some bad ideas start looking brand new. So they asked me if I would fight my father for $2 million. Now, my first concern was, is it just showing up or fighting and winning? Because those are completely two different things. And I know for a fact that there are a lot of men who would take up that opportunity without even asking twice. In fact, the people would take up that opportunity for even a lesser amount because, I think every man knows this, that the relationship between fathers and sons is like an unstable compound. Sometimes it's dark and warm, and other days it's cold and light. So, and it usually takes its own trajectory very often. So I know for a fact that there are a lot of men who would take up the opportunity for once, like to tussle it out with their fathers, just to gauge who is who and who is the man between them. But this is all jokes, considering our background and stuff as Africans. Please do not take this seriously. This is completely a joke, okay? But I, for one, I wouldn't, because for the sole reason that I still want my life and I still want to live. I wouldn't fight my father, not in his prime, not even now. That is, if he doesn't still consider himself in his prime. So, Dad, if you're offended by that, I apologize. I don't know if you're still in your prime or not. But, you know those stories. Like, I know millennials, I think every millennial knows this story, because we know that African fathers or African parents in general completely cut from the same fabric. They are cut from the same cloth. And millennials have experienced this, and they know, they have all had the stories of how it was hard going to school then, how they went to school barefoot, how they ate all kinds of things, how they worked in shambas and things like that. So basically, trying to come up against a person who is that hardened, surely you must be in a sense of utter delusion to think that you could win a fight against such a person. And even if you want that money, you probably wouldn't live to enjoy it, so you'll never hear the end of it. But yeah, I wouldn't want to find myself in a position where I have to exchange fists with such a man. But also just ruining the fun, like even just suggesting that kind of question, like that's completely grounds for being disowned in African context. The joke itself, and people need to stop coming up with this kind of jokes, because those people, and I mean the elders, do not find them funny at all. Because when you tell such a joke, even at a family gathering, you just see how the faces just like, the smiles just turn into frowns, or like it's like a darkness just hovers over the whole place. So, and you know that for African parents, like one thing they don't joke about, they joke about a lot of things, but one thing they do not joke about is their position and how sacred it is, and that is their position of parenthood. So for them, the bar of disrespect is not very high. It's not very hard to reach. One thing you can be, So, and you know how that, like, there's a lot of things that you can do, and they would amount to treason if it was a legal thing. But meanwhile, millennial parents are different. Millennial parents are taking a lot of disrespect. They're taking a lot of disrespect, which older generations wouldn't hear of. You hear things happen to millennial parents and your jaw drops and you're like, how is that even possible? and that reaction is because of the trauma that you went through being an African child in the early 2000s and the late 90s. So, and what are millennial parents doing now? Well, they're playing pranks on their children and essentially letting the internet and, well, everything else parent their children except them. Now, that's not funny, and no one is laughing. But anyway, that's a story for another day. But that's not entirely the whole truth, but it's part of it. But millennial parents are also leading with a lot of love. What did our parents do? Well, they led with violence, and the love was right behind. That is why they gave you gifts and things like that after beating you black and blue. You're probably in a corner crying, and then your mom comes and asks you, do you want eggs? Or do you want come and eat some of this sugar cane? After beating you black and blue. I think that is why we are maybe confused about relationships and love. Some of us, not all of us, because we do not. I think we still have to heal from that because we still relate violence to love. So that's something we also need to revisit, yeah, because you know how also like how your mother would beat you up, or like even like disciplining you, and then like you raise up your fist or like your hand just to guard that, like like from the strike, like from hitting you, like it would tantamount to you beating them, and they would tell everyone that cares to hear that you beat them. You will not believe this child. If I tell you what this child did, you would not believe it. The child beat me. Like the child actually beat me, and I even fell down. Our parents were very good at gaslighting. I don't know if they look back and also see that they were completely out of line. Like they were too dramatic for life. Like they went above and beyond to deliver an act. You've beaten me. You wait for your father to return. And usually the only escape you'd have from that is like if your father comes back like at 9, you make sure you start dozing. You pretend to be dozing by 8 so that you can go to bed. And he would find you asleep. And so that you miss that kind of... Your mother is not reminded to report you about how you allegedly beat her up. But if your father was very vindictive, then obviously that wouldn't save you because he would wake you up with his own thrashing. But also growing up reveals a lot of things, and you also realize how some parents, not all, often came home I think frustrated from the world and trying to make ends meet and things like that. And sometimes they probably would take it out on their children or their families. And I'm not castigating them or pointing fingers. I think that's just the reality. As you grow up, you start to see those things and understand a little bit more. You understand a little bit more about why some teachers were very harsh to students, probably because they also carried things from home and brought them to school. Again, I'm not pointing fingers, I'm just mentioning. And so from that background, just imagine having been woken up from your sleep, your pretentious sleep, just to be caned a little bit more for disrespecting your mother. So I don't find it far-fetched that some men would take up the opportunity to exchange fists with their father, given the opportunity and even to be paid for it. Like, I think it would be just an opportunity to fight back, the sheer pleasure of having an opportunity to fight back after so many years, or maybe it can probably provide some healing. I don't know, but I think, and all this thinking comes from just someone asking if I would fight my father for 2 million. But also from that, just me and even talking back to African parents is like, well, you might, if you talk back to an African parent, you might as well just punch them in the gut right there. Because how dare you? Like, that's very, very, very disrespectful. And that reminds me of a story that I remembered a few days back while I was riding on a boda. Someone, well, a few days, I don't know, probably a year or so back, one of the sons of a celebrated African author revealed that his father, the author, was abusive to his mother. And I think probably because that story never settled, I think that's why it revisited my mind. But I was torn by those circumstances, because on one side you have a venerated author who is also considered a human rights defender, and then on the other side you have a revelation coming from his son, and that revelation does not match up with the image that is expected or portrayed. Now that goes to speak to the imperfections we have, even of that might be revealed of ourselves or even of people that we venerate. But that aside, now back to the African culture of reverence and submission. How do you navigate that? Because, on one hand, and I'm sure he loves his father, but how do you honor a man? And then on the other hand, you have something that happened or usually happens, and it wasn't talked about too much in the years before, but now, even as millennials come of age and things like that, and conversations become more center stage to a lot of the aspects of life, you start wondering how do you navigate that? Because on one end you have a man that you love and respect, but he also had his own shortcomings. But also we have a responsibility to the people in our circles or under our care to protect them. And so whether that protection is deferred or preferred, or whenever it is revealed, it's still a responsibility that we cannot escape. But we also have to be better and make sure these things do not happen in the future. And one of the ways is to talk about them and have conversations about them and make sure that they do not happen again. So where is there a balance? Is there a balance in there somewhere? I don't know. And if such things keep me up at night, then they should definitely keep you up at night as well. So just let me know what you think about that situation in the comments. Otherwise, subscribe and comment and share this stuff and interact with it. Bye for now.